What does it truly mean to coexist? What? What was that? What? How did my voice? Was that like an inverse voice break? I usually go what's. Like my voice dropped in the up. That's weird. What's up, guys? I almost want to cut that. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Sorry, that's never happened. I've recorded thousands of videos. This has never happened. But what's up, guys? That guy with the pencil here. Fun fact. Anyone do have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. If you like to check out the 30, it's like 33 minutes. Gosh darn it. This is what live was that. Why is that live reaction so long? But if you want to check out the 33-minute live reaction to Chapter 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, it is up for patrons and members for $1 a month, or patrons for $1 a month, or members for $3 a month. You can check it out. I'm gonna be doing live reactions for JJK Modulo, just like I do for Fortnite, because I mean, it's JJK. It's nostalgic a little bit. So maybe that's why I went so long. Who knows? Maybe I'll cut them down. But regardless, we are here for Chapter 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. Swimming through the forest, and this is the calm, little sweet, little tickle the soul, tickle the heart kind of tap. It kind of like it's how do I put this? It's like Gege found a sharp object, stabbed me directly, not in a vital area, and then slowly but surely pushed the blade in more and more and more and more, and now my heart's bleeding slowly but surely, but in a good way. So let's not waste more time. Let's hop right into Chapter 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Swimming Through the Forest. A man-eating shark has appeared, and your mission this time is to exterminate it. A shark? Shouldn't that be the government's job? Now, this is admittedly an interesting four-man band. There's one thing I do want to point out, because notably in my whole, it technically was a Chapter 1 and 2 review, it was more so like a general discussion of Modulo as a concept, like what happened in the first two chapters in a loose sense. I didn't really talk about the idea of this four-man band, but it is unique, right? Notably, it's composed of two characters we know little to nothing about, and two characters we know much about, yet simultaneously little to nothing about when you think about it, especially considering for a sequel series. As of course, we we are following the grandchildren of Yuta and Maki, right? But notably, as people pointed out, my brain completely exploded. Oh, I just realized. Tsurugi doesn't have any real connection. But it literally, I'm so stupid. It literally just hit me that Yuka's name is literally just Yuta swapped out with the third letter of Maki's name. Because Maki and then Yuta, you just swap one out, so you get Yuka. I see that. That's actually kind of sweet. They didn't name it. I wonder if that was intentional. I'm not sure, and I'm not even sure if that lines up kanji-wise. I'm just in the American in the English translation, it comes out as Yuka, which is literally just Yuta with K swapped out for Maki. Because it makes sense because she's a grandfather's grandchild, and but she still loves her grandfather because all that memoir. But with that being the case, interesting four-man band we got here, right? Because two descendants of the previous characters, but we don't actually know what Yuka's curse technique is. We know the whole reason that Tsurugi has the ring is because he's considered genuinely weaker than Yuka because of his lack of cursed energy. Whether or not that lack of cursed energy comes from an incomplete heavenly restriction or the lack of cursed energy comes from a suppressed heavenly restriction is debated, though. Because a lot of people in the previous comment section point out that Tsurugi may, in fact, already have a complete heavenly restriction, mainly because how on earth would he get one otherwise? You may be like, what on earth are you talking about, Pencil Man? Remember, Tsurugi and Yuka are not actual twins. They're just siblings. Meaning that, unlike with Maki, where the whole reason she had an incomplete heavenly restriction is because she had a twin sibling, which ultimately, twins are bad in Jujutsu terms. They limit each other's potential, so one of them had to go for the other to reach their full potential. Yuka and Tsurugi don't have that kind of dynamic. Not at all. In fact, quite the opposite, where they are at least a year apart, as Tsurugi is 17, and I believe Yuka is 16. So, I think even if we were to, pull a Gege and sacrifice the female character for the plot, I don't even think that would do anything. I don't know what is needed for Tsurugi to achieve his full potential. But at the same time, a lot of people point out that with the ring being attached to Tsurugi at all times, that may actually be nerfing him because it's the Rika ring. Rika, boundless cursed energy. The only reason I'm hesitant to believe that the ring is actually interfering with his heavenly restriction is one, because it didn't seem like he had a complete heavenly restriction when he was a kid. Before he got the ring. Remember, he got the ring after Yuta's death when he was 11. So notably, he spent at least 11 years. Or I'm not sure when. They don't actually clarify when Maki died. I think he was 7 in the flashback. We saw him with Maki, and we know that Toji exhibited traits of his completed heavenly restriction as soon as he was born, right? Like, it wasn't something he unlocked, he was just born that way. So it seems like Tsurugi may have a suppressive restriction. The only reason I don't think so is because the ring went with Tsurugi when he was teleported out in the first chapter by the guy's curse technique, and we know the curse technique of the guy, the teleportation curse technique, left the curse tool because it had enough curse energy we recognized. Meanwhile, it took Tsurugi because he had low levels of curse energy. So, like, unless, like, the absolute zero, like, ate a whole bunch of the infinite, like, I just don't think the ring has the same link to Rika. If anything, it may act as, like, a slight summon point. Like, maybe one of them will be able to directly summon the husk eventually. I don't know. But that is the hot debate around Tsurugi and his potential and whether or not he can reach it or not. And as people point out, I may have leaped to conclusions a little bit too quick in the first chapter. What we saw where Yuka did the biting jaw strike, that may not actually be a curse technique, considering that's just, you know, manipulation of curse energy around one's fingers. Now, of course, we don't actually see that much in the original narrative. Like, notably, her grandfather, Yuta, can fire beams out, but, like, that was firing beams out. He never actually, like, made constructs of curse energy. But at the same time, they treat it like it's a fighting style thing, like something people could learn to do. And obviously, Jujutsu is likely evolved over the past 68 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately that's not actually your curse technique, and the reason she's considered stronger than Tsurugi is because she actually has a curse technique she just hasn't used yet, or that she hasn't mastered it yet. Bada bing, bada boom. So this is an interesting trio on that front. And then obviously Usami himself, right? Like, we don't know anything about his daddy? Granddaddy? I don't know. We don't know. Obviously, this isn't the same Usami from JJK. I almost said JJK Part 1, but, like, this isn't technically Part 2. It's Modulo. It's a spinoff. That's apparently may only last about 6 months. I'm very interested to see how Gege wraps this up in what would be, like, what? It wraps up in 6 months. 4 months times 6. 24 chapters? Am I math wrong on that? No, that technically, that's 24 chapters. I like, this is setting up a lot to resolve 24 chapters. But regardless, short-term serialization, Usami never got a reveal, but we know this isn't the original Usami because the original Usami looked older. So I'm assuming this is either his son or grandchild. So we have no context for him or how powerful he is, what abilities he has. That's interesting. And obviously Maru himself, we do get context for him later on in this chapter, and we got to see his curse technique. Well, I'm putting curse technique in quotation marks because I don't know what the Sumerians actually call it. Maybe it is curse techniques. They say they have power similar to ours. They don't say they also have curse techniques. But then again, not every sorcerer has a curse technique, so it is kind of debatable. But all that being the case, I don't actually know. We don't actually know much about Tsurugi, or about Maru. So, notably, this whole crew is actually kind of a mystery in a very interesting way. Meanwhile, the Ten Shadows was kind of showed off the second we met Megumi. We kind of knew Yuri's whole deal as a punch and kick merchant the second we met him. Gojo literally went out of his way to explain his curse technique in the second battle we had with him, which admittedly was a few chapters out, so Gojo was actually kind of a mystery. And then Nabar just wasn't introduced for a while. So this is actually very different from Zero and JJK Original, where we have seemingly the core four, and also we know basically nothing about them outside of, like, some of their abilities, which is actually really interesting to see. But all that being the case, back to the chapter itself. I'll talk about another thing about what was pointed out in the last review's comment section later, but we'll get to that in a bit. We see, you can ask, a shark? Shouldn't that be the government's job? And Tsurugi actually follows up with, yeah, is there a reason why you gotta dispatch these two sorcerers? Like, this is kind of not our thing. And Usami explains it was spotted in Jifu. And I do love, one thing I also love, little character details. I love how Maru's looking around like, oh, what is this place? But of course, you know, he's new to the entire world. And I do hope we at least get, like, if not multiple chapters, once again, this is short-term serialization, I do hope we get at least a chapter or two showing us what Sumerian culture would be like. There's going to be another point where I'm going to point that out, where I hope we get to see a bit of the old Sumerian planet or lifestyle or something along those lines because of Maru's reaction to certain things that I do think makes sense, considering they obviously evolved. What is it? It's, is it convergent evolution? What is the term? Essentially, when two things evolve very similarly in spite of not actually being connected. What is it called? Googler! Convergent evolution? Convergent sounds like it's together, though. Is it divergent evolution? But no, divergent just means they evolve differently. Over here! Why am I fat fingering so hard right now? Convergent? No, it's I believe it's convergent evolution. Let me see. Convergent evolution is a process where distinct lineages of organisms independently evolve similar traits or features due to similar environmental pressures and ecological niches, even though that's what it is. It is convergent evolution. It is convergent evolution. So essentially, it's clear that the Sumerians and humans have a convergent evolution, right? Because ultimately, the optimal human form was Sukuna. And notably, at least of the Silurians we've seen so far, none of them are as optimal as Sukuna. Notably, the closest we've seen to one being as optimal as Sukuna isn't even the... Actually, I'd say it's the king. It's a king just because of the similar build and the horns and stuff like that. But no, because those are like extra appendages that one could like gore somebody on. He's very second form Frieza coded. Do I talk about that now? I'll talk about it in a little bit. But essentially, it's clear that humans and Silurians, specifically Japanese humans, I suppose, and Silurians have convergent evolution. So I do wonder what their planet looked like, what their culture was like before it was just 50,000 of them left. And once again, I have pointed out, if you are going to get a major antagonist, especially after this chapter, if it doesn't end up being the Silurians themselves, I want to know what were they running from? What happened to their planet? We need a little bit more lore, but we're only on chapter 3, so I get why you don't get that just yet. But of course, we see after Usami says it was spotted in Gifu. I think it's Gifu. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I don't know Japan prefectures. But with being the case, we see that Yuka points out, isn't Gifu a landlocked prefecture? And so he says, good point. Did it swim a river or something? And I do like how Yuka is clearly more on ball. Meanwhile, Maru is just not engaged in this. He's like, I'm just here. I'm just vibing. You know, it'd be like that. And we see that Usami says, no, the shark swims through forests. And admittedly, the shark has mad aura. I hope it doesn't lose it all and then gain it all back in a weird way. But with it being the case, we see that they hop on the train. A bullet train, possibly, I think. I think it is a bullet train. And they are going out into the countryside. And it's clear that Tsurugi is a little bit caught up on a certain interaction he had with a certain individual last night. As he's hitting this. And whenever you hit this, you're like, your thoughts are elsewhere, you're not fully engaged, and it's looking a little rough. And we see that he says, cursed spirits only appear in Tokyo. Which is a very interesting point. I'll get to that in a second. I do want to talk about that. But we see that Maru asks, cursed spirits? He's like, I don't know what that is. Which once again does hint at their culture. But then again, it's hard to tell how much is being hinted at their culture as in like, this is how it was on their planet versus how it isn't, or how much of it is, do they have different nomenclature, right? Like maybe they call curse spirit something different. I don't know. Because we do see he refers to his curse technique as a curse technique later on in the chapter, but at the same time, he may have only done that because he now knows what a curse technique is. Maybe they have a different name for it, maybe they have a different nomenclature. But we see that, as Maru asks, curse spirits? Tsurugi's like, oh, so I'm allowed to talk to you today, huh? Because, of course, he's confused cross with Maru, as they are twin siblings. And Maru looks on like, buddy, I talk to you every time. In fact, you didn't want to talk to me. What are you going on about? But we see that Tsurugi asks, you don't know what cursed spirits are? You guys use Jujutsu too, right? And Yuka goes on to explain, cursed spirits are incarnations of an accumulated cursed energy that leaks out of people in this country. That's what yokai, ghosts, and apparitions really are. So, once again, in case you haven't read JJK in a while, because the manga did end, 2 years ago? When did the last chapter of JJK come out? No, it can't be 2 years. I think it ended last year, right? Was it last year? I think it has to be last year. I don't think it's been like a whole year. Yeah, because I think in fact it'll soon either JJK's 1 year anniversary ending just passed or will be ending soon. Because I remember the last volume came out in December of last year, so it kind of ended like 2 years ago. The anime, what I'm getting that linked with is the anime, because you could definitely say all this expedition is not just for people who didn't read JJK ever, because sometimes people do that. They hop into like another continuation of a series without playing the previous parts or reading the previous parts. Trust me, as a Kingdom Hearts fan, the amount of people who came to me with questions because they just bought Kingdom Hearts 3 and were like, hey, Pencil Man, what does any of this mean? And I'm like, hey, guess what? There's a collection which you can play on your exact same console that you bought Kingdom Hearts 3 for that you should play, because if I try to explain it to you, you will laugh at me and think it doesn't make any sense. I explained it to them anyway. They just bought the collection and they're currently playing it. But still, with that being the case, I think all the exposition is for both people who'd never read JJK and just need the explanations just like Maru does, which is a good narrative, like ludonarrative integration of a character who doesn't know what's going on, and for good reason they don't know what's going on. It's not like a character explaining something that they should know. Maru wouldn't know anything about this because from a different planet. So I do like that. And also just for people who haven't read JJK in a while. You know, manga's serialization ended last year. In a while, maybe you didn't pick up the volumes, maybe pick up the final volume, and this is the first time you've thought about cursed spirits in forever. Because realize the last time cursed spirits were like really relevant in JJK was what? Kijaku's death and technically Rika? But even then, there's hot debate on whether or not Rika's a cursed spirit or a Shikigami. She's called a cursed spirit by some, but noted as to act as Shikigami and others. So like, it's a little bit weird. But with it being the case, Yuka explains it all. And Tsurugi says, missions to exercise abominations like this haven't occurred outside of the inhuman Wakio in Tokyo for decades. But now this happens right after aliens got here. So, this is interesting. This implies that cursed spirits as phenomena have fallen off a cliff. And they're all centered in human Makyo. Now, of course, I think that's just Shinjuku. I should have looked this up during a live reaction, or right after the live reaction, but I went from recording live reaction to immediately recording this one. Makyo. Makyo refers to... Makyo is a Japanese word that literally means realm of demons, monster. Oh. Inhuman Makyo. In Tokyo. So essentially, what it's saying is cursed spirits are landlocked to Tokyo. Hold on. Where is Shinjuku? Where is... Because now I think about it, the theory I came up with in the live reaction may just be completely invalid. Yeah, okay, so Shinjuku is located in Tokyo, specifically in the West. Okay, so this says... Tell it, don't please. This does make sense based on what happened 68 years ago back in the Culling game. Because Tsurugi mentions missions exercise abominations like this haven't occurred outside the inhuman Makyo in Tokyo for decades. Now this happens right after aliens got here. So, if you, just like me, are a little bit confused by that because cursed spirits used to spawn all over Japan, remember, not even just all over Japan, but all over the world. That's why Gojo was constantly traveling, and even Miguel existed at all, a sorcerer from Africa, and there was sorcery in Africa. It's because cursed spirits would gather everywhere, or cursed energy would leak everywhere. Everybody has cursed energy in the universe, unless your name is Maki and Toji, or completed Maki and just, regular Toji. So, maybe like, that's kind of strange. Why are they all located in Japan? But not just Japan, but specifically the inhuman Makyo in Japan, aka Shinjuku, aka a small part of Tokyo. It's because of the merger. Because if you remember, all that Kenjaku was trying to do when initially making the merger and feeding everything in Tengen was to gather all the cursed energy for all the different colonies, fuel it all up, fill the colonies up to full, compact it, throw it into Tengen, and then complete the merger by unifying everybody. But, big booty butt cheeks, what ended up happening was the merger kind of just died with Sukuna, unless I'm mistaken, right? We know Sukuna's corpse is what holds up the barriers that Tengen once maintained. Notably, they just took the body, threw it where that was supposed to be, and now that maintains everything. But notably, it's not like they could undo what happened to Tengen. Tengen presumably died with Sukuna, meaning all that concentrated cursed energy that was fused into the Tengen merger, which could have happened at any second if Sukuna really felt like it, died with Sukuna, seemingly enough. So all that cursed energy kind of just got focused, concentrated, and I'm assuming dispersed in Shinjuku. And that's why they only show up there, because all the excess cursed energy that would have allowed them to form elsewhere was assumed. Of course, that does make me wonder why, considering it's clear that Japanese people still do produce cursed energy, why they aren't spawning elsewhere, but it may just be that they're producing it in such lower amounts, due to maybe a lack of optimization or anything like that, that makes it so that they are not appearing frequently, if at all. As he says, it's been literal decades since one appeared outside of Shinjuku. So that is very, very strange. I do actually want to see what Shinjuku looks like now, though. Right? Because if that's the case, I'm assuming Shinjuku is a nightmare zone, and probably the only place where Jujutsu sorcerers realistically operate, if I had to hazard a guess, considering, well, where else would they operate if cursed spirits don't spawn anywhere? I don't know. But it's an interesting point that builds on the world building of the previous series, that notably, if you didn't know anything about the previous series, probably wouldn't even question. But as someone who knows a thing or two, because you've seen a thing or two, that did bring a question to my mind. But of course, we see that Maru's like, huh? And poor Yuka's like, oh, sweet mother mercy, he's such an idiot. Let's see. He's saying that maybe this man-eating shark is actually another alien like you guys. And of course, Maru's like, huh? What? I swear my companions don't look like that. Picture Usami showed us. We don't eat people either. He's not human people. But others. Nah, but Yuka says, oh, so you are an alien after all, huh? Which is fun. I guess they didn't confirm that, because they just asked them at the end of chapter 1. Then they don't address it throughout all of chapter 2. It's mainly chapter 2. Unironically, it's like a Yuka and Tsurugi chapter mostly, while chapter 1 is a mostly Yuka and Maru chapter, and this chapter will end up being a Maru and Tsurugi chapter. But with it being the case, we see that they now do hard confirm, right? Like they are aliens, and Maru admits, "I'm sorry. I'll talk about it when the time comes," explaining that ultimately he can't really do all that right now. But we see that Yuka says, "I'm sure there's a reason you and Usami can't tell us about it. I know you're not a bad guy." And Maru's like, Yuka, you got me feeling a certain type of way. Tsurugi, look away. I need to thank your sister with my personal alien gifts. But we see that he says, Yuka. And Yuka's like, probably. As of course, she still doesn't fully trust him. And hey, I don't blame her, right? Maru does seem like a very nice and like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, aspirational, just like, he just seemed like a good guy. But at the same time, as another person who would actually be cool with meeting aliens, I understand the paranoia. You can't even fully trust all humans. I wish that was the case, but you need, like, stranger danger is a real thing that already exists in our universe where no one has powers. Now imagine an entire alien species with third eyes and powers similar to yours fell out the sky, quite literally. Even if they were the coolest guys out there, I would also be constantly have at least one raised eyebrow being like, Are you the ops? Paranoia would get me too, so I don't blame Yuka for being like, probably. But she does clearly trust Small to some degree. But we see that Yuka is explaining something after they get to the village. There are 2 victims and 3 witnesses. Witnesses say they saw a shark next to the mangled remains of the victims. No bodies of water are present near the site where the victims were found. It might be a bit late to ask, but are you sure that's what you saw?
Listen, Missy, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw it on a dark moonless night with my very own, very aged eyes.
Once again, oh, this is a thing I do want to point out. Shout outs to everyone who did inform me that Geigaku Tami is in fact doing the storyboarding for Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. They just aren't doing the full artistic completion, which does make me 100% believe the whole reason why the first 2 chapters didn't feel very Geige to me is just because 1, the art style, and 2, because of the lower stakes and different nature of the level of combat that we're going in right now. My latest memories of Jujutsu Kaisen, the original manga, are like Shinjuku, even like mid Shibuya, calling games, like insane levels of stuff. So when I'm thinking of the choreography, I'm thinking of like stuff of that level. And I gotta remember, we're dealing with, unless Maru's secretly super duper cracked, which he probably will be. It seems like Cross maybe end up being more cracked, but Maru's probably gonna be super duper cracked. But all that being the case, we're dealing with a much lower level of combat right now, right? Like we aren't gonna see characters like Mock or like Tsurugi acting like his grandmother and leaping through the air and clashing with a forearm beat. Like that's not happening. Same case for Yuka. If she has any curse technique, we're not gonna see her doing anything that like Yuji was able to do or Yuta was able to. Like it's not the case just yet. They're still young, and in the same way that her cast was young. In fact, I think Yuka, unironically, by being 16, is already older than a good chunk of her cast. She's older. In fact, I think she's older than Yuji was when he was fighting Sukuna, or the same age, which is crazy. But notably, less experienced than our old cast. And thusly, not at the same level of power. So it makes sense that everything feels a bit different, even with Gege's storyboarding, which is confirmed by the comments on Chapter 2, just because, well, it's a lower level. Like, and not in a bad way. Like, obviously, we're going to start, at the start of a narrative, we're going to start lower level, because it isn't really a direct sequel. It's more so a continuation in the same world with, ties to the original. So I think I'll just adapt to it. I'm going to pay attention more for action and stuff like that and be like, hey, do I see Gege's pen here? Or am I just tweaking? Let's see. But after the man gives a shining endorsement of his very, very good witness skills, Yuka says, so that's why I'm thinking it's not exactly what they saw. But the autopsy results found bite marks that aren't like those from a bear or anything. I'll meet up with you guys once I go talk to the other witnesses. Now, admittedly, with me now knowing, so they did a live reaction over on Patreon, which you check out for the lowest $1 a month. You can remember for those theaters, but that thing was 30 minutes. I was thick as all got. But admittedly, it should have clicked with me earlier that if you could tell it wasn't from a bear, they should also know it's not from a shark, because notably the animal it does end up being does not have shark-like teeth. And in fact, the bites couldn't be that big. So it is very interesting that the reports got confused with a shark at all. Even the villagers called it a shark. The autopsy results should have been like, yeah, that like leaping to a shark. I'm guessing is just a mix of them not immediately being able to identify the bite marks, because the creature that did actually end up doing it is not native to Japan, and also the eyewitness accounts of the villagers seeing a certain somebody. But would it be the case, we see, I'll meet up with you guys once I go talk to the other witness. And they click off their communicators. This is very interesting. I wonder, like, is this the device doing, like, what is this ring here? Is she, like, communicating mentally into that broadcast? I'm not sure how this works. But, with it being the case, we see that Suri says, you heard her. And Maru goes, alright, seems legit. And Suri says, you sure these kind of things aren't secretly happening all over Japan? And Maru naturally asks, why would I know about man-eating land sharks? What do you mean? And ultimately, we flash back. I still remember this guy. I did remember. But this is the teleporting guy who was, doing the human trafficking. He says, I believe aliens will start a war and invade us. I'm asking if you guys are launching an underwater invasion. Which is hilarious, because as was pointed out, Gifu is a landlocked region. How are they going to start an underwater invasion in a place with no water? This is going to be one of many times where Tsurugi's proven to be not the Not the sharpest tool in the kitchen shed, I will admit. Though admittedly, sometimes he just is caught lacking. Because, you know, he's very headstrong. But there's also the earlier point of him not immediately realizing that Gifu is landlocked. But then again, you know, as a person who's also bad with geography, that can happen. But just the idea that we've already been over the fact that Gifu is landlocked. There's no water bodies around for a while. But somehow, underwater invasion. I think it'd make more sense if you said underground invasion. Just because underground has multiple connotations like that. But underwater? What is that water? Come on now. But we see that Maru says, oh no. Or at least thinks, I'm here so that doesn't happen. Because he's meant to be the representative. He's essentially meant to judge, as we'll see confirmed later. But with it being the case, Maru says, what about you? You really think Earthlings' rationality and morality have developed enough to criticize aliens? And, admittedly, in humanity's defense, you know, just a teeny tiny bit biased. Yeah, I'd assume so. You guys are able to communicate and have convergent evolution. So, like, you very likely have developed at least somewhat similar moral systems to the point where you can actually judge and criticize based on what you would know, considering you guys are all humanoids who can communicate. Meaning if you were to plan an invasion, it would be like a human planning an invasion. Once again, we can't even trust all humans on the planet. Of course, we're going to be skeptical of people who look like humans but have extra eyes that are not from the planet. But we see that Tsurugi says, huh? You got a lot of nerve talking like that after you barge on somebody else's turf. Which is true. And once again, why I do wonder, hey, how strong is the thing they ran from, or how stupid were they with their original planet? I'm hoping it's the former, mainly because another thing, I'll just bring it up later, a lot of y'all confirmed in the comment section for me that I believe, according to Lightning and many other translators, it was, in fact, stated that the king of the Sumerians, number one, he was stated as king, which was not the case in the previous chapter. Like, at least in the Viz translations, the king of the Sumerians was not stated as the king. But apparently, the king of the Sumerians, the guy with the dual gargantuan branching horns, he is a special grade sorcerer, meaning he's capable of overthrowing a country. He's very specifically a special grade sorcerer on Sukuna level. That is actually a thing that is properly translated in that way. So, this guy is Sukuna level. How? Why? Where? What is the relation to Maru and Cross? We don't know. He could be their daddy, for all intents and purposes. We just don't know. He did pop out shirtless, though. And it'd be weird if he followed behind his son that way. But, you know, each their own. If I had abs that good, I'd also have my shirt off at all times. So, maybe. But it is very interesting that it is confirmed that he's a Sukuna level threat. So, I wonder what his abilities are. I wonder if he could defeat Satoru Gojo. And I do wonder, like, how a character like Yuji or Yuta, like, I wonder what that guy would do in the Shinjuku Showdown. Of course, questions for another time. But of course, naturally, with that being confirmed, it does raise the question, once again, what happened to the Sumerians' original planet? Was it a case of self-destruction, or was it a case of something else out there capable of overriding a guy who's on Sukuna's level in this universe, and they're currently running to Earth because they're little scaredy cats? Are they frauds or are they not? I don't know, but I'm intrigued to find out. But with it being the case, we see that Maru admits, it's not like I wanted to. Why are you even picking a fight? What's your problem with me anyway? And Tsurugi says, I can sense you want to pipe down my sister. No, but that was bad. That was bad. That's very bad. I gotta stop. But I'm sorry, main girl, main boy. It typically happens. But Gege didn't do that in the previous series, so maybe they won't do it again here. But with it being the case, Tsurugi says, I'm a Jujutsu sorcerer. I could die on a mission at any time, so I can't afford to have an idiot like you by my side. And once again, Tsurugi, I hate to burst your bubble, my friend, but one of you guys saved the kids. One of you guys was about to get viciously diffed. Who do you think was who? I can tell you it wasn't Maru who was about to get viciously diffed. That man popped that third eye out and went bonkers on the teleporter, man, and instantly OHKO'd him. You, Tsurugi, you were about to be teleported to the bottom of the ocean. And all them kids, too. So, like, you were going to be cooked regardless. So, ultimately, Tsurugi, buddy, pal, he's no idiot. You, my friend, are the fool. But, of course, Maru says, you sound just like my brother. What about me, you stupid? As a person with a brother, I actually do understand that. Like, the amount of times I've been called an idiot or dumb or stupid by my own flesh and blood. Like, we are literally the same person, just slightly genetically remixed. Because of different times and circumstances and experiences. How can I be stupid and you're not stupid? It's like when he makes your mama jokes. We have the same mother. We popped out the same woman. Make your daddy jokes. We have the same dad. I know it's not as common, but we do. The jokes don't work in context because we have the exact same parent. But with it being the case, we see that Tsurugi says, like when you defeated that kidnapper, I don't know what kind of curse technique that was, but if you're capable of pulling off a move like that, why didn't you just do it in the first place? And Maru admits, I explained that already. The higher-ups ordered me to not interfere with the mission. And ultimately, Tsurugi says, and you put those orders above a kid's life? And yeah. What you gonna do about it? Because ultimately, well, then again, he doesn't know this at this point, but we're gonna realize why he put it above the kid's life. Because the Sumerians, I mean, they may want to be peaceful. May think it's neat, may think it's cool, may think it's buttery, take use of society and stuff like that. But they may go bonkers in different ways. Considering danger could be afoot if Maru is forced to use his power. But we see that Maru is like, well, it's funny you mention something like that. But, of course, shark time. There's actually a floating shark. And once again, I must give insane credit to Iwasaka Sensei. Yuji Iwasaka Sensei? Or no, is it Iwasaka? It's not Iwasaka. It's Yuji. Oh no, it is Iwasaki, not Iwasaka. Iwasaki. Yuji Iwasaki Sensei. Fantastic art. Like a beautiful, well-drawn manga shark, man. Like that's actually really, really good. And notably, I will admit, I've seen some people complain about Modulo's art style, saying it's a bit too soft for Jujutsu Kaisen. And I think I do agree, but I think it goes back to the idea of what I mentioned earlier of not necessarily being able to tell that Gege is the one doing the storyboarding, because it just feels different. But I also think the narrative is fundamentally different than the original narrative of Jujutsu Kaisen. So I'm perfectly fine with the art feeling just different enough to have me have these moments of like, does this feel like Jujutsu Kaisen? No, not necessarily, but it's because it's not. It's Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. And this flexing of this insanely detailed chart, which I know would simply not happen in Gege's hands, at least not in their weekly manga, kind of crazy. And it does look very, very good. But we see, of course, both Maru and Tsurugi like, one, I do like to find it funny that they have, like, genuine reactions here. One, because this would obviously be Maru's first time ever seeing a shark in person, and Tsurugi's actually genuinely appalled and amazed to see a literal land shark, which is, I think, a thing, but not in the same way that this is a thing. Shark! And we see that Tsurugi's like, out of the way! And obviously Maru's like, idiot stupid head, who you just called me an idiot. If you use your cursed tool here, wouldn't cause a wildfire? And Tsurugi immediately goes, oh, actually, that's a good point. Like, once again, I have my moments. I'm not the sharpest with the shit. I have my moments of sheer good old-fashioned idiocy. Like, the amount of times I have them, it's really bad. Like a problem really bad. Where sometimes all cognitive, like, you've seen it. It's happened on camera so often that, like, I don't even have to say, oh, well, you know, if I reference this time no, sometimes my brain, it's farted in this video where my brain will just be like, hey, all the information you have stuck in that massive forehead of yours, and we're not snapping half of it, we're snapping all of it, and it just goes away. So Tsurugi and me, we are exactly the same, but no, you can't be running around calling people idiots when you yourself are occasionally the fool. But, and I'll admit, the humor style does feel like Gege. Like, not, even if the storyboarding and, like, art direction doesn't feel exactly like Gege, the characters and their reactions and how the humor is being doled out, it works for one, and for two, it does remind me a lot of Gege. It reminds me of, I'm trying to think of a specific moment, but there are a couple, and they're all kind of playing together. But with that being the case, we see that Tsurugi says, then how about you do something, you good for nothing? Even though, once again, Tsurugi, he literally saved you and your sister and those kids' cheeks. He did that against the orders of his higher-ups. One of you's have made more good for nothing. But we see that Maru's like, hey, what'd you just say? Fine, I'll show you how goated I am. And he just tackles him. Which is amazing, because once again, I'm assuming this is the second time you've seen a shark ever. You already got the one picture that's like, alright, that's a shark. And then bada big bada boom, he actually just tackles a full floating land shark. And we see that Maru says, now you can attack without using fire, right? Which, I don't get it. Why could he not use, like, what changes now? Does he have, like, a regular katana? I don't know why this still wouldn't cause a fire. It would just burn you as well, Maru. But, with it being the case, we see, Tsurugi says, who do you think you're talking to? I don't need your help. Which, you already kind of did in the past, buddy. I don't think you can play that particular card on the field right now. You don't have the mana for it. For MTG players out there. But with it being the case, we see that Tsurugi goes in and stops immediately. As he says, well, as he as if, we must all do the shark was a he. I haven't seen you kids before. And, of course, naturally, at the sight of an older gentleman popping his face out of the shark's... Do sharks have necks? Do sharks have necks? Necks? Nope, sharks do not have necks. I didn't think so. But essentially, out of the lower body portion of the shark, a man's face pops out. And genuinely scares the soul out of both Tsurugi and Maru. Who did the for the second time in 2 pages? But, with it being the case, we see that both are shocked to say, it's an old guy! And of course, the old man, who isn't actually old. I don't think, personally, call me shocked, call me crazy. I don't think 46 is old. I don't think you're, old until you're, mid-60s, maybe? Or, early 60s? I don't know. With the way life expectancy has gone up, especially presumably in this alternative future, presumably life expectancy has already gotten higher. I wouldn't say 46 is old. That's, now, 46 is low-key, not exactly the new middle age, but it's not necessarily the highest age out there. But we see, he says, who are you calling old? I'm only 46. And obviously, so he says, that totally makes you old, which is... Tsurugi, if you think that's old... Ooh, buddy, you're for a rude awakening. But with it being the case, we see that, obviously, the man says, and who are you? Students from Jujutsu High? That got Jujutsu sorcerers doing all out the way in the boonies. And naturally, so he asks, wait a second, you know about Jujutsu High? Which is admittedly true, but we'll see why he knows about Jujutsu High. And what they will admit, his build is kind of immaculate. Hold on. Oh! Okay, good. It's closed. But, for reference, I just recently hit my 1-year anniversary. Not in a relationship. Boy still single. But in the yim. If you know what the yim is, it is the gym. And thusly, hold on. It's hard to tell because of the camera. But, my gains, they're pretty, and to note, today was leg day. So the gains, let me flex a little bit. They're pretty immaculate. I'm stronger than ever. I'm big, I'm beefy, I'm jacked, I'm juicy. Kind of, sort of, not really. Even my leg. I can't fit my leg in the frame. I'm not hopping on the chair. I'm not gonna hurt myself. But essentially, your boy's getting jacked and juicy. It's been a whole year in the gym. I've been getting my protein in. I've been getting my cardio in. I'm still fat though. But wouldn't that mean the case? This man is well built. Well built. It's gonna sound all the more impressive when you realize he's well built in spite of his current circumstances. As we see, I'd better, because I graduated from there. How else could I have been able to pull this off? Which is very true, but there are curse users who could have pulled this off without, going Jujutsu High. But we see that, so he's like, ugh, he's my senpai? Gross. Which, what is that funny about, I don't know. Notably, it's a completely different context, but I hope if I were to ever go back, any of my old alumni, they wouldn't be or alma maters, they wouldn't be or the kids there wouldn't be this guy's old. Nasty. Oh yeah, I'm visibly old. But with that being the case, we see that Maru says, we're here on an exorcism mission. We heard there was a man-eating shark. Is that you, old man? And we see that that naturally the man's like, wait, did they say his name? Did I say his name already? Oh, you calling old and only 40? Oh, no, they didn't actually say his name yet. But we see that he says, do I look like I'd eat a person? I haven't had a decent meal at all lately. Just booze and snacks. And that's why I say the physique is extra impressive. For booze and snacks, he has extremely well-defined arms, extremely well-defined, quads. Like this man is, look at the calf work. He has better calves than half the people I've ever seen. Like this man, he's built like that for a guy who's been living on nothing but booze and snacks. Golly. What is in them booze? What is in them cursed booze and snacks, dog? Let me need to shove my way. But of course, we see that after he says, that's a problem in and of itself. The man says, the name's Osada. Like I said, I'm a former Jujutsu sorcerer. The man-eating tiger has been what's appearing here. His name is Torinosuke, and I've been chasing after him. A tiger? You mean a wild tiger? And Maru once again hits a... y'all are saying words right now. Tiger? What on earth is that? Which I do find hilarious, but also, once again, has me really interested in Samurian culture and their specific history and what their animals were like, what their ecosystem was like, what was their planet like, what did they look like, essentially? Did they have anything similar to tigers? Did they have anything similar to giraffes, lions, bears? Did they have anything like that? Notably, so you didn't have the same response when you heard of a bear, but of course it was distracted, seemingly enough. But still, it is very interesting that he's like, tiger? I have no idea what that is. And it does make me really want to see the Samorian ecosystem, what they were like, and how all of their, like, what essentially what their biome was, right? Like, what were their interactions like? And we see that Osada explains, over a quarter century ago, a pair of tigers brought in by illegal foreign traders made this mountain their home. And Torinosuke is their grandkid, the product of inbreeding. Which, once again, goes to show animals' testament and genetic strength. Because, like, inbreeding does not work for humans for a very good reason. One, because it's nasty. And two, because, like, it'll just break down. Like, your genes are not supposed to be similar at all. They're not, don't. Even because I've seen people, admittedly, I think it's pretty weird. If I can at all identify you on my family tree, we are not having any. That's just weird. I don't know. I've heard people get weird with it. Like, oh, what? You mean to tell me you wouldn't do anything with your, like, what, fifth cousin twice removed? The fact that I can say cousin means it's too close. If I can say cousin, I don't care if it's once removed, twice removed, twice removed, quintice removed, pentice removed. I don't care if it's dodeca removed. If in some way I can trace a common ancestor that's not literally thousands upon thousands of years back, that's too close. So humans, inbreeding, not a good thing. It'll literally jack up your genetic code. If you wonder why all those pictures of old royalty look jacked up, it's because they were all inbred. They're all inbred. Because they wanted to keep it in the family. By keeping it in the family, they jacked up their genetic code and they all went crazy and or nuts and had physical deformities. But seemingly enough, tigers and most animals can actually do that. That's why many animals have actually bounced back from the brink of extinction, or at least stayed endangered but not actually extinct, because somehow it works. Though admittedly it's not perfect. The reason cheetahs kind of suck is because a lot of them are inbred. Not a very diverse gene pool. So cheetahs kind of bad at living, kind of fodder. But tigers, lions, and bears, oh my, I suppose. And we see that Osada admits he's been a real smart tiger ever since he was little. Even though we can't speak the same language, he knew exactly what the other was thinking, just looking each other in the eyes. Which, hey, look at that. Two different species coexisting in the exact same area. I wonder what that's meant to be an allusion to. But, of course, we see, he says, recently, a massive solar plant near the top of the mountain, which was at the end of its operational run, was restored with the funds from that paranormal treaty. Which is a very interesting idea. I wonder if the paranormal treaty is just like the one that was set up between all the nations to let Japan run anything international, or if it was the paranormal treaty that's currently being set with the Sumerians. I don't know. I'm assuming it's probably the former, just because the Sumerians are seemingly a very, very, very recent development in Japan's atmosphere, or the Earth's atmosphere. But he says also, but because of that, the river dried up. The heat probably played a part in it too. A river drying up destroys the whole ecosystem. Torinosuke came down from the mountain looking for a source of water and some prey. And that's when he offed those villagers. And then the villagers saw you. Oh, and then the villagers saw you trying to take down that tiger. Basically, my curse technique allows me to summon and seance allows me to summon and draw out the powers of what I wear, regardless of the location. Don't blame the villagers for getting the wrong idea. No one's blaming them. I do want to blame you, though, Osada. You made it all confusing. So, this is kind of funny, and also kind of cracked. That's a dumb, stupid ability, mainly because I want to know its upper limits. Osada, could you hypothetically put on a Satoru Gojo outfit and then become Satoru Gojo? If we get you some blue contacts, can you call those 6 eyes? Huh? Like, could I give this man an Organization 13 cloak and then suddenly he's literally Xemnas? Like, what are the upper limits of that? What does he mean? Like, is it just limited to, like, physical animals? Is that, obviously, he's wearing a shark suit for a very specific reason, so he can track blood. But, like, what do you mean by that? Because, honestly, that's a pretty cracked ability if you stretch it even slightly. Like, if you could dress up as anything, could you, like, dress up as a dragon? Like, if we got, or, like, imagine those dinosaur suits. Like, have you ever seen those, like, those big wobbly dinosaur suits? Like, those T-Rex? Like, if we got him one of those, could he literally turn into a T-Rex? Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, Osada? That's kind of actually crazy. But we see that Osada admits, I want to take Kuranosuke down. I want to save him. And both are shocked that you can get the 33-minute live reaction for as low as $1 a month, or become a member for as low as $3 a month. They should get 33-minute live reaction. I'm sorry, I gotta stop playing. But with it being the case, we see that Tsurugi says, a beast who killed people must be exterminated. Because you know he's got a taste for humans. And of course, Osada's like, you don't gotta tell me that, kid. But this is different. He was chased out of his home because of human circumstances. And now you want to kill him because of human circumstances? And not just that, he was chased out of his home and his ancestors were brought to this place because of human circumstances and simply abandoned here, presumably. So ultimately, this whole lineage of tigers is just getting screwed over by humanity over and over and over and over and over again, which is a fun build on the idea of what Maru was talking about earlier, the idea, do humans even have, like, the amount of development required to criticize us aliens? Like, that doesn't even make sense, because y'all are violent and cruel in certain ways, such as this motion right here, which I do think is a nice build on that. And very specifically, we see Osada be like, dude, it's not fair, we shouldn't do it like that. And he explains, I don't get along with the villagers, so my house is real far from town. So you're saying you can keep a tiger safely there? I'm a Jujutsu sorcerer. I can manage a tiger or two if I gotta. Which should be true. And I'll see how bummy a certain someone is. I'm kidding, he's not bummy. But we'll see a certain someone who may not be the best. Like no one ever was. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide. The power to understand. The power that's inside. I have not listened to the original Pokemon theme song in so long. I have the Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, is that true? I know that we'll see it through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, Pokemon. But that's like all I got. I don't know why. I used to have that song memorized by heart. But then again, I have not played a single Pokemon game to completion since Sword and Shield. So maybe, but fully enough, I am still obsessed with Showdown, so I don't know, I feel like I should know better, but obviously Showdown is very different from the actual games. I'm sorry, went on a complete tangent there, but essentially, Jujutsu Sorcerers being able to handle wild beasts does make sense considering what they were trained for. I do wonder though, obviously, with what was set up earlier, the idea that her spirits don't really appear that often anymore outside of Shinjuku, the Makio realm. What are Jujutsu Sorcerers for now? Like, I mean, obviously, the more the merrier, but like, I do wonder how many of them are left? How profitable or even sustainable is the business now, considering it's so small scale? Clearly, Curse Spirits still don't appear all around the world, but and at the same time, they do still only appear in Japan, but only in one part of Japan. I do really want to see what that place looks like and how many sorcerers there just are in general, considering that may be another reason why the Sumerians are so confident to come down now, because maybe there are barely any sorcerers. Osada seems to be one, but may not be enough. But of course, we see that Tsurugi's like, the answer is obviously no. And okay, but with that being the case, Osada's still not going for it, as he says, if we're talking about safety in a natural ecosystem, then extermination should have started with Torinosuke's grandparents. But I chose the path of coexistence, and I can't change my mind about it now. And notably, I do believe that he could change his mind about it now. We will see him change his mind about it in a little quick second. But notably, I do like the idea that he wants to stick to his morals, right? He doesn't want to take this tiger's life just because of things that were afflicted on it completely out of its control. And notably, it's clear that to some degree Maru even sympathizes with this, or at least the idea of coexistence. Once again, sort of clearly highlighting, and the chapter will go on to do it again later, fully highlighting what this chapter is truly about. The idea of coexistence between two different groups of people who have the ability to communicate, the ability to recognize and rationalize each other's morals, or possibly the lack thereof. And notably, we see that Maru says, hey, please, Tsurugi, I'm asking on his behalf too. And Tsurugi, having a whole stick full up his butt, you might as well say sticking out his mouth or his nostrils, says, I said no. What would you do if that tiger ends up killing more people? And obviously Osada says, what, you mean take responsibility and slit my belly? Which is actually a thing. But we see that ultimately, is that a reuse panel? No. Nope, it's different. I think it's different. Yeah, it's different. But we see that Tsurugi says, I'm saying, even if you did, it's not like that helped the victims or their bereaved family. And that is a good point, right? Ultimately, essentially what Tsurugi's saying, yeah, life sucks. It's a tragedy that he ended up here, and then we got to give him back shots. But unfortunately, he's put himself in a position where these back shots are not even a possibility. They're a necessity. So we got to give him back. But ultimately, it is Maru and Osada who are more focused on the idea of connection and coexistence. Obviously, Osada because he knew Torinosuke, and because of Maru because of his entire mission here. Meanwhile, Tsurugi, due to his experience with the aliens so far, does not like the idea of coexistence because he's unsure what could come from it. He's unsure if they have the power to sustain and protect the world if they were to coexist. Thusly, he simply wants to eliminate the threat as it is. Once again, playing this into the idea of the aliens versus, you know, the wild beast. But of course, we see that Osada's not taking no for an answer right now because he's got something. Stop right there. He's close. And so he's like, what? As Osada immediately dives out using his sans technique in order to become shark once again. And he sees, or he says, what the heck do you think I summoned a shark for, huh? Its nose is made for smelling blood. I know you're over there, Torinosuke. And we see he does dive headfirst at a tree, but unfortunately, Torinosuke could see. As ultimately, the blood was laid as a trap, as Torinosuke hides in the tree. And notably, Mr. I can handle a tiger too if I need to, gets ganked and darn near blitzed by Torinosuke, who leaps down from the tree as he admits, that's right, you've always been smart. And he slashes off the tiger, he slashes off the arm of the costume, or the fin of the costume, presumably negating Osada's technique and also damaging him, as both Maru and Tsurugi lunge in yelling, Osada! And Tsurugi does shoulder check the tiger, but notably the tiger does kind of eat that. And I know, it just sound a little bit mean, a little bit cruel, a little bit wrong, but Tsurugi, I'm just saying, your grandmother with an incomplete heavenly restriction would have been able to one-shot that tiger. I mean, Mister, I don't care about coexistence. Like, if you really wanted it gone, you would have it gone, right? But it doesn't look like you're built like that. Tsurugi, you may just be an itty-bitty bit of a fraud. Maybe you do need that. I'm kidding. Well, maybe. But with it being the case, he shoulder checks it, and the tiger immediately comes to a stop. And we see that as Osada bleeds out, Maru's like, Tsurugi, please, wait! And ultimately Osada says, no, it's fine. And we see this, I'll admit, as much as it's jokingly getting on his case, this panel's got some mad aura right here. Him hitting the stance, hitting the stance up against Torinosuke, who's beautifully drawn here. Once again, it is Yuji Sensei fully flexing their ability to draw animals on us right now, which is very, very good. And we see that Maru says, Osada, please! We need to gaslight this man now! And we see a younger version of Osada, as he says, hey, don't worry, I'm alone too. Whoa, sorry, Ma, I know you're still alive, as the mother of Torinosuke roars, or at least growls. But he says, whoops, but kid, your parents will be gone before you someday. Being all alone ain't all bad, though. I know it'll just make you stronger. But if you're ever in real trouble, you can come to my place anytime. And it's clear that Torinosuke did once trust Osada. And even the mother did, considering neither of them attacked him and simply interacted with him, which isn't typically normally a thing. And it's also clear that Osada has been here for a long time, because he looks so different now. And presumably this is maybe recently after he graduated from being a Jujutsu sorcerer, or recently retired from it, considering presumably there's not actually that much work to be done with that. But with it being the case, we see that he missed the call to action. Torinosuke actually did come back to him. He did remember to come back to Osada. You can see that by the footprint left outside his house. But of course, seemingly enough, for one reason or another, whether because he was inebriated or was asleep or something, Torinosuke simply could not get to him. And by then, it was already too late. As Osada says, since you came back to see me again, I thought maybe, just maybe. But the one I knew back then is gone. Lady, there's no getting through to you now, is there? It's the eyes of a changed beast, one who cannot be saved. And we see that ultimately there's one request made by the man who wears a shark. Just don't let him suffer. I'm sorry, Torinosuke. I'm begging you. And we see Torinosuke lunges into Tsurugi, who does immediately slay the mighty beast. And of course, Osada is fine. He gets his shoulder wrapped up and everything, as Maru looks over the slain beast. Hey, sorry I made you take on such an awful task. And Tsurugi admits, it's fine. It's my job. And Osada says, you really are a Jujutsu sorcerer. I see the vision. And notably, it is Brain? Tsurugi who goes to Maru, and once again trying to check up on him, which is already a sign of growth and connection. You know, they did bond over this already. Like I mentioned, chapter 1 was a Yuka and Maru chapter. Chapter 2 was a Yuka and Tsurugi chapter. Chapter 3 is a Tsurugi and Maru chapter. As we see, Maru admits, my job is to gather enough information to decide whether or not we can coexist with Earthlings. Huh? My curse technique is shared with my younger twin brother, so I'm forbidden to use it except for emergencies. So, see, that's once again goes into the idea of nomenclature. Did they actually call their abilities curse techniques? Do they have their own name for it? Considering they're from a different planet, and they're only calling it curse techniques because that's like the common ground that they would understand. But what they've heard that their abilities are called on this planet, and thus they are trying to blend it as much as possible. It's really hard to tell. And actually, obviously, now knowing that it was not in fact Maru who was very cross with him. I'm sorry, you're 55 minutes in this review. You don't have to make at least one stupid joke. Okay, one of many stupid jokes. But with that being the case, we see them. That Surugi does feel a little bit bad. He's like, oh. And now it's probably clicking that, oh yeah, those markings are in fact different. But with it being the case, we see that Maru admits, my brother can tell if I used a lot of energy. If it ever gets to the point where I have to use my power, it'd only make him trust Earthlings less. That's why I hesitated before. It wasn't because I didn't care about the Earthling children's lives. I promise you that. I'm sorry. And that is sweet, right? Ultimately, that, like I mentioned earlier, it's a deal of utilitarianism, right? Where ultimately, yeah, he could use his power at all times. He could just spam the darn thing, use a whole bunch of energy. But right now, that's not his mission. And ultimately, it's clear that Maru's goal is actually coexistence, right? He wants to be able to live amongst humans, live with the humans, and not cause them great fear or anything, or go to war with them. Even if, seemingly enough, the Sukuna level king could come in and just start giving everybody backshots. This is not what Maru wants. Once again, assuming he is not just some ambassador, but possibly even a prince, maybe the child of the king. Maybe he's one of the few who has the influence and the desire to do something of that sort. So he wants to be as careful as possible, going the utilitarian way rather than not. Because maybe if he was spamming his powers from around start, Cross would be like, well, clearly these humans are not at all safe. We gotta boom them. And they it goes to his daddy or the king and is like, hey, we gotta boom them. And the king uses the domain expansion of times a billion and destroys all Japan and the planet. Like, who knows? So I'm glad that Maru does feel this way and is willingly explaining it to Tsurugi. And even Tsurugi can tell that this is like a big admission for him and asks, should you really be telling me all this? And Maru says, not at all. I'd appreciate it if you kept it a secret. Which is nice, right? Once again, this is Maru extending his trust. He wants to be friends with Tsurugi. He wants, well, literally says it. But, hey, why'd you decide to tell me that? And Maru admits, because I want to be friends. And that's why I do think ultimately they are the same age. As much as I made a joke of like, how old is Maru? How old are these aliens? I don't know. But humans convergent evolution, he does look around their same age. So I wouldn't be shocked if he actually is around their same age. But with it being the case, he wants to connect with these people. He wants to join humanity. He doesn't want to conquer them or rule them or destroy them. So ultimately, he's doing everything in his power to meet that. If it came at the cost of the children, he wouldn't even let that happen. He decided to use his power, even though he himself likely wasn't in any danger. But once again, is a testament to his desire to connect. And once again, does make me heavily believe that there are probably going to be further ops from Beyond the Stars that actually put the Sumerians in this position in the first place. Because I mean, unless they did truly destroy their own planet on some Krypton type beat, I do not see how else it could be that they're here now. Though destroying their own planet is still possible. But with it being the case, we see that Maru admits maybe that tiger and us aliens are similar. But at least you and I can speak the same language. That's why I want to tell you about myself as much as I can. And we see, from the bushes, there's like, understanding, tiger, me. And notably, we see that Tsurugi immediately seems to be on timing. And he says, had a cub? And obviously, Maru's like, wait, Tsurugi, wait! I did wait, Tsurugi, wait. And we see Osada come around the corner being like, no, you better give this tiger headshots! Only for it to be picked up by the scruff, looking very much like its daddy now I think about it. Hold on. Let me see. In fact, is that just the same design? Oh, it's close enough, but you know, there's not like much difference between like certain animal species. Even humans are actually mostly similar when you look at us. But with it being the case, we see that he grabs by the scruff of its neck and hands it right over to Osada. Hey, old Osada, don't take your eyes off it this time. And Osada promises as he cries, I won't! We don't know where its mother is, but presumably it may have also died. Maybe it dies of thirst or starvation, and that's why Torinosuke was so desperate, and he was trying to get water and food and prey for his child. Which may also have a taste for humans, so be careful, Osada. But still, this is clearly an idea that coexistence could be possible as long as you give it the shot, as long as you give it the chance, and as long as you don't jump to conclusions. And we see, and Maru naturally asks, hey, are you sure about this? And Tsurugi admits, doesn't matter. Nobody knows how that couple turn out. And just like with us. And obviously Maru hits what now feels like a signature. I've seen a bunch of Maru PFPs with that big like cheesy smile he does in chapter 1. And as he says, "Yeah, you're right." And the chapter ends with poor Yuka never having left the houses, as an old woman says,
"You look just like me when I was young."
And she admits, I really should be going now. And that's the end of the chapter. So, if you couldn't tell by how much I was yapping, a W chapter. It is a little, not as, but I wouldn't even say head-fisted. It is just clear. It is smacking its meat on the table. Gege is pulling a tobyfox.exe and putting themes.txt into the narrative and being like, we need to coexist. It can be dangerous. It can lead to conflict. And conflict does need to be resolved, ultimately for the sake of survival. But if there is a chance to coexist, we should focus on that chance and we should hope for the best. We should not go in with negative intentions or negative desires. And ultimately, we should accept the strange and work with it rather than simply rebel against it. And that is a very beautiful message, especially in a modern day and age, considering how much xenophobia is going around for absolutely no reason. So I think it is a very beautiful narrative. And obviously, I'm a big fan of character work. So even if I didn't overall like the theme and how it was executed, which I do think is actually fantastic, I like Osada as a character, despite I think him having a really broken curse technique. We're probably never going to see him again, or at least not very consistently. And I do like the dynamic between Tsurugi and Maru. Even if it starts out antagonistic, it's clear that the connection between the two will only continue to grow from here, considering now it's clear that there is a chance being given, right? Tsurugi wants to be friends. He wants to coexist, because ultimately he understands that they should. And I think that's beautiful. It's just real good stuff. It's just peak. But if you didn't know what we did in this video, please leave a tiger's tail. A tiger's tail, whether that be T-A-L-E, as in like tales in a story, which could work, or T-A-I-L, tails in like literal tiger's tail, as in the tail on the end of a tiger. Either one, leave that in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that all the keys will see not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also even have a Patreon below where you support me for as low as $1 a month. The things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. So now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the 33-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad variations of all my videos, and you can come to $20 Patreon and $20 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also the link to my Ko-Fi listed down below. You drop 5 for a short video, 20 beans on video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Guillaume, Buddha Ura, Alex Kenny, Enzo, Swift Strike, Autumn Mornings Lazo, Super Flame Zero, Yuki Ally, Azo2404, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: Victor Raji, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Dreadzoen, and A+A. I'd like to give a big old thank you to our Ink tier members: Austin Wimberly, Eugia, and Shrimpo the Shrimp. And I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members: Jay Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Waki Munoz and Waki Munoz.